Hey folks, it's Lindsey Huddleston back in the building. Another SPS Edge show with my able-bodied co-host, Mr. Terry McCord Jr. And as always, we have our guy, Coach Orlando Watkins. We call him Houston because we are NASA out here in the world, in the universe, trying to talk good talk as it relates to sports, culture, and community. Terry, we got a really loaded show. I think we have an opportunity to really feel the time as you'll hear our voices on the Streets Are Watching podcast network. Shout out to Don Houston, my guy, as well as Clarence Sumo Barbour. But a lot of things we're going to go through, and I'll just put it out here just to get us warmed up. We're going to talk about Michigan State football and their home opener, which is going to be this Saturday at Spartan Stadium. Unfortunately, be amongst the media that will be allowed to go in there. There's some serious COVID protocols that I have to go through. I just got my information about that. So won't quite be bubble style, but it'll be college football being played in the time of the pandemic. Also, before I even get into what's next and talking about what we have next, Michigan State just announced that they are concluding their swimming and diving program at the end of this year, Terry. They're going to be concluding the swimming and diving program at the end of the year. And I think that is noteworthy because that's speaking to the financial impact that this coronavirus pandemic is having. And that's kind of probably like the sign of what's to come. But that happened. That was just announced a little while ago. Also, I want to talk about the sneaker consignment industry, referring to the 15 billion with the B dollar sneaker consignment industry and what's going on in that industry and some things I've learned. I expect to learn more, especially as it relates to some young men I'm going to have the pleasure of sitting down with really soon that you're familiar with, referring to Lenny and Lonnie representing the House of Souls. These young men right here have a bright future with what they're doing. I'm going to be getting with them really soon. And next Saturday, we'll be in the building over there for SPS Edge watch party for the Michigan State game. Can you believe it's time to watch Michigan State go off already? And we're going to wrap up today's show, talk about a very interesting topic, the hire of NBA's. The New Orleans Pelicans have hired Stan Van Gundy to lead the charge for young Zion going forward. And there's a lot of criticism behind that, as it has been for just about every hiring that's taken place, with the exception of maybe Glenn Rivers over at the Philadelphia 76ers. So with that, Terry, that's a mouthful. I just wanted to get it out there and kind of set the tone about what's going on. But tell me what you think about what we got and what we're going to do.
Really excited for Big Ten football to be back. I'm really have been able to be a part of those guys, Lenny and Lonnie, growing up, and I'm meeting them, and they're bright kids. They got a bright future, and seeing and going through what they've been working on with House of Souls has been really unique. I like what's going on. I got to go over there and check them out one day, give me some new kicks or something. And, because I'm really a part of that whole sneakerhead kind of background, but it's really interesting. And so, and capping it off with Stan Van Gundy, I had to do some deep diving. I remember watching them on TV with Dwight Howard and Turkoglu, and I wasn't really, that conscious about sports yet, but I definitely had to do some deep diving. I'm ready for the show today.
Well, I think that's telling, man. I can appreciate you always on the spot when it comes down to doing your research. And to kind of touch on the back end first, the Stan Van Gundy hire and him and his lineage and him being a staple in the NBA, that he can even get that job. But we'll definitely touch on that. So, staying with the first part of the discussion with Michigan State, of course, we talked about the decision for Michigan State to discontinue discontinue their swimming and diving program. And I think there's a little other caveat to add. Something interesting I learned was that when you talk about major swimming and diving programs in college sports, those individuals who have the desire to go to the next level, and as you know, in football and basketball, that's the NBA and NFL respectively. But for these divers and swimmers, Terry, their goal is to train for the Olympics and compete in the Olympics, which is awesome and an amazing thing. I have that love, especially as related to USA basketball. But to do that, the equipment you need, the setting you need, Michigan State had a 25-yard pool, which is like, 25 yards, that's a long way. But what's needed is like a 50-meter pool. And those are the type of standards that's needed if you want to compete on the highest level, the most elite level, that is competing for the Olympics. So you're just saying Michigan State hasn't had the kind of success in their program. And I wonder if that has a lot to do with being more of a northern state, if that makes any sense. And I know you can swim
Right.
inside, but I would see that outdoor pool sometime, and I remember seeing people swimming in an outdoor pool, and it was cold outside, Terry. It was cold, and I don't know if that was just their only option, but that's part of what's happened. I guess the reason I really want to touch on that as we get to talking about Michigan State getting ready for Rutgers on Saturday in the COVID protocols is that we are in the COVID, man, and there's all kind of fallout, whether it's a program having to conclude, a swimming and diving program, but of course they're going to honor the scholarships. These young people have to make a decision about something
Right.
they've been committed to, Terry, probably half their lives. It kind of hit my heart a little bit because my dream is my daughter to be able to get a scholarship to go swimming and do swimming or something like that, and we watched that. So I can really relate to that, but it's good to know that their scholarships will be in place, they continue their education. But talking football, we were on with Mel Tucker earlier this week. He's getting ready for his first game. Terry, you know what it's like as a football player. What is it like, man, getting ready for that first game of the season, finally?
I would say, I give 3 words. I say it's exciting, anxious, and unpredictable for MSU. I say those 3. I feel like it's exciting because any football player, being in the situation where they were not being sure if they would compete or not, I would be excited to get out there and compete, against someone other than my teammates for once in this summer and fall. So I would say exciting for sure. I would say anxious because this is the new step of the Mel Tucker era. So we a starting quarterback hasn't been released yet. And so I know that people are a little anxious and ready to hear who it is. Is it going to be Theo Day, Peyton Thorne, or Rocky Lombardi? So they're really like getting to the point where they're like anxious to hear who it is. And
Who do you think it may be, Terry, if you had to just take a guess?
I'm gonna be a little conservative here. I think I'm gonna go Rocky because he's been
Okay.
in this. He's been around these guys longer, and he has may have won these guys over just with him being in being a Spartan for a while. So I think we're gonna have to rely heavy on Elijah Collins. Running the ball strong, and hopefully the young playmakers, receiver core step up this year. But I think it's gonna be a big statement. I think this Spartan team is unpredictable. We don't know what we're gonna get, and a lot of times that can work for your favor. So I'm really excited to see them kick off.
Yeah, I went on the road last season to see Rutgers play, and they had a lot of fire in them, man. You can really tell that program, even though they were had the worst record in the Big Ten at the time, they you still had that fire, and you don't just want to take these things for granted. And I have to admit, as a member of the media, I believe I'm objective, but I have a bias. I want to see Mel Tucker be successful, and I think I like the term that you use, unpredictable. You really just don't know. And he's going up against a new coach there who had a background in the NFL. They knew each other in the NFL, and there's not a lot of film on either of these guys. So how do you really scout when you don't even have that kind of film? But I just think that the reality and the great thing about us having this platform and the things we've been talking about, you almost like, yeah, Mel Tucker can lose, but as an African American coach in the Big Ten during these times, you don't want to see that because it's like you wonder how long, win or lose, before the fact that he's an African American coach, a new coach, one of the highest paid coaches, and definitely in Michigan State's history, and here he is going out there. I mean, do you think that's going to play a role in now, or is it too early and it just has to be some more time before something like that even becomes a topic?
I think not so much now, but I definitely assume that people would keep in conscious with just being aware of it. But I think mostly it's because everyone is looking forward to see Mel Tucker start from the bottom and go up. I mean, he's done. I feel like he had unfinished business in Colorado. He was leading them in the right direction and getting the boosters and getting more money for their program. And he was a good defensive coordinator down there in Georgia as they played Alabama in the title game. So we see what he can do, and now we're kind of seeing him at the head of a higher institution of Michigan State, and we're just eager to see him compete against this Big Ten competition. We know how the Pac-12 can be; it's not nearly as competitive as the Big Ten, but now he's put on a platform where he's going against Penn State, going against Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan, different teams on on a weekly basis, and now it's like, we're eager to see how he'll do. I'm confident just watching on Twitter the different kind of sayings that he's saying, don't worry about that play. Let's worry about the next one. And a guy that I hear talking a lot, Darian Harris, who I work with Press Pass with and him being on the panel, I hear him talk about the art of neutral thinking. Always worrying about what's next. I call it like situational. Being a not situation, but solution based thinking is what I like to say. Always thinking of what can I do to get to the next step. Like, let's not worry about it. Yeah, we're in this. We're odds are not really favoring us with COVID and not being able to practice very long. But what do we need to do to get this win this week? So I think I love hearing him talk about that on Twitter, ESPN, and just hearing his personality come out, because he's the head. He's the head of the snake for MSU.
Right. No, you're right about that. And I love to hear the saying as well. And, every time I'm talking to him in an interview, and this week we were talking about just what you're talking about on Twitter, where he is getting on day, that is,
Right.
as far as a Theo day, correct? As far as him smacking his hands after a bad play. And I've watched athletes, including your group of players that you played with, other players, and when there's a bad play or something doesn't happen right, they smack their hands, they say, my bad. But he was very conscientious in saying, hey, don't do that. We don't even want to acknowledge that. We want to better move on. I thought that was important, and that's why I posed that question to him during the press time with him. But I think it speaks to the culture he's creating here. It's not to say that Coach D'Antonio, the Michigan State's all-time winning football coach, didn't have that. But, with each new group, there's a new personality that comes with that. And especially in these times of COVID with the shutdown and, now finally getting back. But, I just really hope that that he can have a successful game. My question to you also, Terry, how important is it for him to win this first game?
I think it's very important. I think it kind of sets the tone for these new traditions and this new era, I like to call it, of his time being here in East Lansing. I think this is very key for him. I think this is something to get everyone to really officially buy in, even though it's against Rutgers. I mean, a win is a win here in Spartan country. So we're eager to see our Spartan guys get wins. And so having Mel Tucker, get that win, I think it will be great for the program itself, and it'll get these guys kind of amped up and seeing, once, you hear all summer and you hear all fall, with COVID and them practicing, this will lead to some wins. We're here grinding our butts off, conditioning, lifting, play install, and defensive schemes. Everyone here is working for a win that week. And so just being able to hear that, being able to hear and know that this is going to lead to a W, I think that ultimately gets the players behind you, officially. And a new coach loves to see W's in that column. So it's always good to get a win as your first week as a head coach.
Yeah, you make a good point. It is Rutgers coming in, and Rutgers, doesn't have a history. It's not Penn State. It's not, God forbid, Minnesota or even Michigan. I say that in order of like how influential these programs are. And then you're going to fast forward, and I don't want to get too far ahead to the next week because there's something I want to talk about in between there. It's like, you want to get that win for the buy-in. You want to, let that be part of your record. You won your season opener. And there can be so many caveats that people can say, oh, there are no fans there. It's the COVID season and all this type of stuff. But I just think it's really important for him to have a solid showing and to get things started. And because I think, if not, man, I think people are ready to unravel and ready to get going, because when I'm on these media calls, when he stated that he didn't have a depth chart that he was going to be releasing or let you know who's going to be the starter, man, you can see some of those other press from the other media kind of getting up in their seats like, that's like the red meat they want. Because once they get a quarterback that's saying, okay, that's who you're going with. So it's almost like, okay, we're going to tie you to this player, sink or swim. You know what I'm saying? And so you can almost get that. And then you wonder, if he wins, that extends the honeymoon. But then you get into, the following week, which we'll talk about. I wonder how long that honeymoon is going to last for him. What do you think?
I think, as a player and, just not knowing who my starting quarterback is going to be, that can be tough. Because I know for me, playing at high school ball, I'm like, who's going to be the starter? I need to get reps with my starting QB. I mean, timing is a big thing. So I think the thing about not having a starting quarterback, it can kind of hurt you and help you in the same time. Helping mean that competition stays high every day in practice. I mean, whether your demeanor one day can get you a little bit ahead of the next guy, but I think it can kind of hurt you a little bit too. And it can hurt you as in like who gets most of the reps. I'm pretty sure that they're all pretty much even between the three. But I think it's kind of tough because you want your best quarterback, not your best, but your starting quarterback to get most of the reps and feel comfortable within the offense and get as much as you can. I mean, you want to get as many reps as you can in practice, to feel comfortable in those game time situations and know what's going on. I mean, the quarterback is like the coach on the field for the offense. And so knowing what your coach wants and getting that kind of feel and that mojo feeling of like, being that starting quarterback, it can be good for your team. And also, as a leader, your quarterback is the head of the offense. And so knowing who that guy is can build the camaraderie of the offense, and let us know that this is our guy, and it kind of gives that guy that sense of feeling of like, this is my team, I'm ready to go. So
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it is exciting. I want to definitely just talk about one point you made when you talk about the consistent competitive nature of the practices when it's
right.
not. I think that is nothing but healthy when you have people pushing themselves because you don't want someone to start to rest on their laurels and say, well, I got this and I'm good. And then you get stagnant and something like that can happen. And I want to say hello to all our friends on social media who are joining us, particularly on Facebook. Shout out to Coach Orlando Watkins connecting us to the Michigan AAU link. A lot of great people involved in that. Just to give a recap of where we are here on the SPS Edge show, we're talking about Michigan State football. They just had an announcement in the athletic department discontinuing the swimming and basketball. Excuse me, I keep saying that, man. I don't know what kind of premonition I'm having with this, the swimming and diving program based on the budget deficits taking place because of the coronavirus and whatnot. And here we are talking about Coach Mel Tucker's debut and things like that. Well, with that, I do want to get ready to make a transition. I don't want to get too far ahead on the Spartan schedule because if he's successful against Rutgers, you have another formidable opponent coming in, which is Jim Harbaugh in the University of Michigan. And I shouldn't say coming in. Michigan State Spartans will be traveling to Ann Arbor. I won't be able to make that trip. Last year, man, I really enjoyed myself in their press box, man. They had a nice little setup and it was cool to be down there. And let's just talk about the festivity that comes with the annual Michigan State game. This will be their 113th meeting, and it's going to take place on a very festive day, Halloween. But the interesting thing is taking place during the coronavirus pandemic. But before we get into that, on that date, when you talk about being festive and you talk about what we're doing here at SPS Edge to really capture and share inspiration, but also be guardians of the culture, whether it's the sports culture, whether it's the hip hop generation and how they connect to it. But there's a great situation going on that you're aware of that I'm learning more about myself. And that is the House of Souls, which is a sneaker consignment business that just opened up this month in Okemos, Michigan, ran by both Lenny and Lonnie Smith. Lenny spelled Lennie, which is important because I was raised as Lenny, Lenny. You probably didn't know that, Terry, right?
I know.
Yeah, but I'm going to have a chance again, like I stated earlier, to sit down with those young men this week, and you'll be able to see that, but also be able to be over there on the 31st for the Michigan State game and have an SPS Edge watch party. You can come in and check this out. The love that's going to be happening with SPS is going to be a 20% discount, Terry, for individuals that come in to look at doing some shopping, and we'll talk about that too. There'll be some pizza, so there'll be some food. I think it'll be cool, but we will be masked up. We'll be following COVID protocols. Shout out to the store and the protocols that they're on, because I believe that if we're masked up and if we're respecting social distancing, that we can continue to move through this pandemic. Things may not be the way they have been in all the years that we've known them with the festivities and things, but I still think there's a great opportunity. But more importantly, Terry, I really want to talk about House of Souls in this sneaker consignment industry and some things I didn't know. Yeah, I grew up in Detroit, and the word we used was check them in when it came down to people, taking gym shoes and whatnot, and it wasn't Yeezys or whatnot. It was top 10s, Adidas and all that. But man, this sneaker industry is some $15 billion as it relates to the consignment. And these young men have really provided a safe haven, if you will, Terry, because now you don't have to go on social media and meet someone at a sketchy place. And then I'm also hearing that many of the people who pose as being willing to sell or, buy these shoes are predators, Terry, or they're preying on a lot of these young people who show up. So with that, I know you've done your research as you always do. Let's talk a little bit more about this consignment sneaker industry and what it really means, not just for the culture, for the economy, and what people normally look down upon being people who are all into gym shoes and sneakers when they're actually kind of into some valuable assets. What do you have to say about that?
Well, just off the economy, I want to start off with is like kind of the micro economy side of things. I mean, with micro, you're more focused on the individual and how they react with our economy. And I have a couple buddies that are into the shoe reselling thing. So like now you're getting to a base of how much is the buying price and how much is the retail price. And it's always something that these guys like. I mean, they have social media pages about them about how these shoes are going for this much, retail price is 200. And I mean, it's crazy to think that, they had these camp outs down there on the Villa on the MLK. They're out there camping out for the next shoe. And a lot of these guys aren't even going to wear the shoe. I mean, I have a lot of them go there, buy the shoe, go ahead and sell it on the retail for retail. And so, I mean, it's a great business, I think, for young guys and the young generation coming up, because it gives them a sense of, having a sense of ownership, being able to get these shoes, clean them up, sell them. And I mean, it gives them it's like a sense of culture, like you said. I mean, the sneakerheads, everyone likes the latest kicks, the new shoes. I'm not a guy that's like live like that, but I do understand, and I know who people that, are really big into those kind of shoes. And a lot of the times, we realize that the guys that are the most into those shoes don't even have the hottest kicks, because they're noticing that if I can get these shoes and resell them for that much, wear them for like 2 or 3 days. It's funny. I mean, I hear one of my guys, Jacob, wears shoes for maybe like 2 to 3 days, and then he sells them. And then you see people who say worn twice, worn once, never worn, and that like increases the value. So I mean, it's a lot of factors that comes with it. Limited edition, the Travis Scott Jordan ones. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's just to hear that Nike is coming out with these new shoes, and I don't see any of these sneakerheads culture going away anytime soon. And I'm really proud, not only young African American teens, today in Okemos in their environment coming up with a different with a new store, and that's bringing that to their area. And it's really cool. I mean, I saw the Meridian Township commissioner, I believe, in their live video, and she was saying that we want to get more businesses, minorities to come out here. And I think that's kind of the bridgeway that may start that, with them being so young and starting that and establishing generation wealth. And I love seeing that, and just seeing how they can build this, learn the business process, and they're getting people to support them. And that's all you need to start a business. And I feel like they have a really good plan and a really good, solid product that they really want to get out, that's attracting, that can attract a lot of people who are at, are really any age. I mean, I would think that, people like me, my dad, maybe yourself, would love to get some new kicks, you know what I'm saying? But now we're getting to, like you mentioned, a safe haven for people to get these shoes.
Yeah, no, Terry, you're absolutely right in everything you're saying as it relates to what this means. And for me, this has been an awakening. This has been a growth opportunity, because I didn't position these individuals who were the sneakerheads, the hype beasts. I didn't look at them as business people. I didn't see that. And I think what we miss sometimes is the culture is so important when you talk about the impact fashion has, what it does for self-esteem, how it drives influencers and what you can do with that. And it's amazing that beneath my nose, unknowingly, that all this is going on. And it's really giving me a different outlook. And it's kind of liberating, man, because it's like you go in this space, and I can't wait, I'll do some video with them, and we'll be there, of course, for the MSU Michigan game. But the space is just really a comfortable space, man. Just the shoes, it's like a lounge area. And I think the energy and the vibe, because people are saying, look, man, I'm going to eat off of me. I'm going to create an opportunity off of me. And I think that's very important in these days and times, Terry. And maybe that's why I'm so drawn to it. And for SPS to be able to have a role to play in that, for SPS to be able to have an opportunity to have some credibility as it relates to that, because they go hand in hand. Because I'm sitting there saying, hey, man, we're talking about sports. We're talking about achievement. We're talking about overcoming obstacles. And right here, and the real story is that this idea for these young men was born out of the coronavirus pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement. So the same frustration and angst that you and I have been discussing, since the summer is coming to fruition for people. And there's a chance for SPS to be a part of it. And I think that's important. And the one thing I just want to emphasize, man, is that despite what's happening in the world, Terry, despite a lot of the travesties that we see committed to people of color, African Americans, as we talk right there, I just have to remind people, man, the one thing we have is culture. The one thing we have is the ability to create something that drives and inspires. And I think it's very important that we look at the House of Souls in the reality that we can continue to monetize this. The last thing I'll say on this, Busta Rhymes said this years ago, and it really stuck with me. I mean, Busta Rhymes, I know that's going back. We talking about rap catalogs, right? But Busta Bust is the man. I grew up on him in college. He said, man, this rap stuff is feeding people. And as simple as that sounded, I had to think about it. Like, man, here is something that's created that we've created, a culture we've created that's employing people, that's, making people's lives great. Busta Rhymes kids have gone on to college and whatnot. And here we have this opportunity. You see something incubating here, right here in Oakland with these young men. And I just want to be a part of that. I want to be around that. I want to be contributing something that's going to manifest more, because when I see their success, I see my success too. I see your success there. It is really good to see these young men and what they're doing. And I'm looking forward to sitting down with them. And I'm glad that it's not just me talking about them now. There'll be some more opportunities for me to, one, expose them to what's going on, for me to learn a little bit more about this sneakerhead culture and what's going on. But also, man, lastly, to spark ideas for how to create wealth, to spark ideas for how to be self-sufficient, to spark ideas about how can you take an idea and expand it, because everything started as an idea, but there's so many roadblocks along the way, no matter what you are, your background, your past or whatnot, or whatever you're trying to do. But it's very inspiring to talk about, and I'm excited just saying that now, what we got going on.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's the big thing that they're thinking of. And as a business owner, you think about what's my idea, who am I trying to sell it to, and what kind of profit that I can make off of this. And I think they touched on a lot. I mean, they want to attract kind of, first they probably thought of their generation and just being in mind, like Gen Z, up and coming adults that are coming in, high schoolers. And then what they're making is like the shoe resale business. And then who their profit is simply just those people wanting to buy those shoes. And I think once you establish those three things, and then the rest will come later, like resources and who I come from. But once you establish those things, you can kind of sort of create that wealth. And I think that's one of the big things that they're thinking of, that they may not have really thought a lot about, about generation wealth and how this can start up something new, with them and their family. And I think this kind of inspires a lot of people like myself, who are majoring in business and, looking to maybe start their own or be a part of another. And so, I mean, it's very key for them to inspire other people around them, because then it brings a sense of freedom. Me and my father talk about, the ultimate freedom is that economic freedom, that the economic empowerment the economic empowerment, the empowerment that it gives you, to want to manage your own and feed your family and build your own, and essentially, give down to your kids to give to their kids. We see that a lot in in white families, but a lot of the times that, we're starting to establish that in ours. And it's always good to see that with young kids, especially at around my age, to start that up.
Yeah, man, you really said it, man. What a powerful thing to say, especially when you talk about freedom. Shout out to your dad and him sharing that with you. And it's right, that economic freedom. And to be honest, the story, because I was able to get some backstory, and I talked to their mom, Nadia, who's an awesome entrepreneur. They're from a family of entrepreneurs. The story really starts with one of the young men wanted he wanted a BMW. And his mom was like, that's a $40,000 car. I don't know what to tell you about that right now. So maybe you need to start a business or something. He was like, okay, that's what I'll do. And I think it's very important, Terry, that even though we talk about this in the form of a very inspirational story, you got to show up to work every day. You got to show up. You got to put in work. You got to hit the nail with the hammer every time. You got to hit it, boom. You got to show up and bang it. And I think the difference between someone being excited about an opportunity like this or really wanting to, create their own way is, are you willing to show up every day and do the work? And I think that when you mix the inspiration and the motivation with the dedication to show up and the discipline to do it every day, like once you know what you want, if you just get up and bang it, you'll be okay. And I think what people go wrong is either they really don't want that and it's so easy for them to have something else to direct their attention, or they can just show up and say, I'm not going to worry, and then I'm going to be fulfilled in the process, because it has to be fulfilling to create something. It has to be fulfilling to have an idea and then see that to start to come to fruition. And as you know, Terry, it doesn't go from idea to the perfect example of what you want. It goes from idea to how do I get this out, and challenges along the way. And I think it's really important. That's why it's worth, man, really just following your dreams and really following your heart for what you want. But I can't say enough about how inspired I am. I look forward to us being able to talk to them soon. So maybe what I can do, Terry, with the time that we have, and we have a nice amount of time, but maybe we'll use that to really just set that aside for the latter part of our conversation that can take us out for the rest of the half hour that we have here. And again, shout out to the Streets is Talking Podcast Network, doing great with growing that podcast platform. If anyone's listened to us and they're interested in having a home for their podcast, you need to look at thestreetsoftalking.com. But here we go into what will take us for the remainder of our discussion. The hiring by the New Orleans Pelicans of the NBA of senior NBA veteran coach Stan Van Gundy. I have to be a little transparent that when this hire happened, I was really split. I was split about the hire, but I also couldn't deny my personal connection to Stan Van Gundy, because I remember when I was at a camp at BCAM, Basketball Coach Association of Michigan, shout out to them. I was there with my guy, Don Showalter, Coach Showalter from, he was there, I should say, from USA Basketball, so I was able to connect with him. But Coach Van Gundy was one of the presenters. And if you know me, Terry, I make a move on who I need to make a move on, because I just really want to connect with him, being an NBA coach, especially with my work in sports psychology. I approached him. It was at Oakland University. Because of my time working with Governor Granholm doing advanced work, Terry, whenever you have a dignitary or someone of a celebrity coming in, they're going to move different. They're going to come into different entrances. They're going to go out of different entrances. And me using that information, I was able to find out, okay, where is he leaving at? So I could be positioned to have an opportunity to communicate to see what can happen. And fortunately, when I communicated with the leadership at BCAM, they let me know where he was coming in at. And as he was leaving, I just approached him and just told him who I was, and told him about the things I've been doing. And I said, man, I would love to better just come to practice and observe. And he was very forthcoming. He said, no problem. I love to do that. He told me who to contact. I made contact to the organization, and they welcomed me out on said date. And it was one of those dates where these guys were in for one of their NBA practices. Now, NBA practice, Terry, is nothing like a college practice. You'll see death and murder, man, at a college practice. I say that jokingly, but you'll see hard-fought games. But NBA practices are very light, very light in the sense that they may turn up for a second. But anyway, before I digress, I say all that to say I appreciate Stan Van Gundy personally. Stan Van Gundy got me inside and helped me build a relationship with Reggie Jackson, who's now with the Los Angeles Clippers, come in contact with the Andre Drummond's of the world, see Blake Griffin close up in that kind of environment. It was a great experience. And I went several times. Several times I was in their practices, being able to observe, and that was great for me, and I'm forever grateful. And I think that what it does, Terry, it just makes me take a pause before I can be critical of the hire. But what I will do, and I want to get your feedback on it, I will say that I know the GM is David Griffin. I know the success he's had in Cleveland. And I know, of course, they have one of the biggest stars to be in the NBA, being Zion Williams, playing for them. So my thought is, okay, maybe they said, instead of one of these young whippersnappers who are great, like the Jason Kidds of the world, who's not so much of a young whippersnapper, if you will, but the Sam Cassells, these other names that you're hearing that are out there. Hell, What about Nate McMillan, former coach of the Indiana Pacers? Like before you start hearing these names,
Chauncey
you know,
Billups too. I thought you was gonna hit Chauncey. Yep,
well,
Chauncey Billups.
Chauncey took the lead assistant job
Yep,
with Clippers, but you're right.
yep.
Why not try to woo him away? But they
Mm-hmm.
chose Stan Van Gundy, and the only thing I can really think about that hire is maybe what I've been missing this whole time in this discussion about, these coaches in the NBA. Maybe it's, Terry, that these coaches, that these NBA organizations want their coaches to represent them in such a way that they chose to take a veteran coach like Stan Van Gundy, not so much because of his flair and all that, but because of his consistency and his track record over time, as just being somebody who's been around. He's just an old soul. I mean, he's had, administrative roles within organizations. I mean, it's just like he's safe. He may not be a splash hire, if you will. He may not be a sexy hire. How about that? But it's like, there's not going to be a scandal. And not that any of these other young coaches would bring that to the table. I'm just wondering if that's the case. And here's the last thing I'll say on that. And maybe, and just maybe, it's also that he'll hire a top, quote unquote, young assistant who can really help with that development part for Zion going forward. So what do you think about that?
Well, just going off of just diving deep these last couple of days, I found like a couple quotes, that I want to report. So two part of the reasons why they hired him was his ability to teach while building genuine relationships. And being able to teach while doing it. That's very key for a young core group that they have. And they believe that he's one of the most accomplished leaders and authentic human beings in the NBA. And so I think that's a big key, with him being, his flair that we know, just watching him, with the Pistons and the Magic and the Heat, that we know that he has this sense of, he's very different than most of these coaches. And he brings that kind of that mojo and that defensive mindset while coaching. I mean, the Heat when he was with the Heat for a while before Pat Riley, he never had his team lower than 10th in defensive rating. So with the Orlando Magic, we're top 10 for 3 straight seasons. And so the Pistons went from 25th to top 10 in 2 seasons. So we kind of see this thing where he's like having this brand of defense, but not only offense. I mean, Dwight Howard became an MVP candidate under him. That was one of his if anyone's gonna have like their selling point is like Dwight Howard for him. And I feel like that's very key for him as him trying to get these jobs with like a young player like Zion. I mean, Dwight Howard and him may not have the same kind of skill set, but it's still a young athletic body, who's looking for some grooming and a little, touch-ups to his game to make him that complete player. And we see him develop guys, the Pelicans may not have these strong stars like the Clippers, Lakers, and Bucks right now, but he was able to get Jameer Nelson and Rashard Lewis an all-star. They became all-stars. And Ryan Anderson became most improved player while under him. So, I mean, we see him kind of develop these guys, while, under his system. Not to mention he helped lead them to an NBA Finals, but they lost to Kobe 4-1, but still being able to, those were the bright years of Orlando in a while. So, I mean, just him bringing that kind of presence of, I've done this before and I've won. I mean, it's very key to, I think it's kind of a safe hire, like you said, but still he brings that kind of mojo that you need from a coach, of like, this is what I'm here, this is my system. And it can kind of rub young athletes in a way, and I know we'll get into that later, but then again, it's like, I mean, he's shown and he's proved. I mean, I remember watching the Cavaliers play the Pistons back then when LeBron was there and Kyrie and Love, and although they swept the Pistons, but those games came down to the wire. I remember there were times where the Pistons led for a while and the Cavs had to come back. And so, I mean, it gave you that feel of like, that tough mindset. Like I said, how they were top 10 defensively those 2 seasons, but still, I mean, he brings that presence of tough, hard-nosed basketball that the Pelicans, were kind of lacking a little bit. I mean, you had, guys like Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, as they were pushing to pursue the playoffs. I feel like once they got to the bubble, their drive kind of flew away a little bit. And I think, with a coach like Stan Van Gundy, who knows what it takes to win, I think he can kind of get that kind of mindset into these young players and help groom and mold them into great NBA stars.
Yeah, no, excellent points, man. I mean, this hire makes me say, okay, one, NBA GMs don't care what nobody else outside of that organization can. I mean, right,
Nah, not at all.
that's a good thing. But two, it's like, are they all just believing in a formula, an old school conservative formula? But you made great points in their favor. You talk about how the defense has increased, building those genuine relationships. And let me also say, Stan Van Gundy has been credited for being one of the most outspoken individuals as it relates to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes, sir. Yep.
His relationship with his players, and I can't hold him up, man. But I just think that, it's almost like you can't create, the NBA, an association that has megastars like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, young guys like Ja Morant coming up, Zion Williamson right now. You can't create these, explosive, high flying, dynamic, players that you put in this, and then you make a hire that's supposed to be super conservative. I mean, maybe that's the balance. Is that the equivalent of a Steve Nash, even though Steve Nash is younger? I guess my real question is, were those things that Stan Van Gundy did with Dwight Howard so long ago enough that you had to go and research because it was like before your time?
Oh, yeah.
Do those things still translate to young athletes right now? And if that's not the case, is that fair to Zion? Are we running the risk of negatively impacting his development? Or, like you said, having someone who has such a conservative background and track record as Stan Van Gundy will be important for helping him with the building blocks he needs to be successful?
And I love the question. I really think that it won't. I'm going on a limb and say that it won't. I think of their relationship.
Help me. What won't?
I don't think it will negatively impact them as a player.
Yeah.
I have two comparisons that I want to kind of bring in. One, first, like a little bit of why it won't. I think Stan is, just his personality of, knowing how to, knowing how to build relationship with players, which is one of their selling points to hire him. Which
You're
is one of
saying
his selling
never
points.
fades. So. You're saying that's a timeless skill set that he's mastered that can work in any era. Is that what we're agreeing to?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
And I believe that, with him being about defense, I think he's also had high offensive ratings, and, just him having, being able to coach defense and offense. He's with the Magic. He was top 10 in each offense and defensive rating. So I think he still brings that offensive flair. You see the game today, everyone wants to score on offense, but defense isn't really too touched on in the NBA anymore.
You say that just to briefly say, I look at a lot of these mixtapes, if you will, or highlight tapes from these players, and I'm like, dog, I don't see no defense.
Oh, no.
It's like,
see little quick swipes.
Yeah, you scoring, but I want to see a defensive mixtape. Right. I want to see defensive highlight reel, like, oh, and then that's gonna make me look at it like, okay, you solid, but I just want to put that out there, man.
Oh yeah, and it's completely true. But I think you run into guys like Ja Morant and Zion Williamson who want coaches to let them be themselves. Like, they're their own character. Zion has a unique personality, very much people person, and Ja Morant has this neat, gritty, let's get it. I've always been underlooked, and I'm about to prove you wrong kind of feel. I feel like Stan won't really change Zion. I feel like Stan will let Zion be Zion. But, like someone like brings up one of my comparisons with was me and Coach Jones and other players. Coach Dave Jones with Eastern High School, with me, just being a part of that system is like, Coach Jones, you could be your own player on offense as long as you play defense. And I feel like that was one of his always it was a selling point. He was like, look, if you can't play defense, I can't have you on the court. I don't care if you score 30. If your dude scored 40, I can't have you out there. And so that was one of the things that I feel like Stan kind of brings, that defensive mindset to where, like, Zion can be Zion all he wants, these explosive dunks and fans hooting and hollering, loving the team, as long as Zion abides to what Stan comes to. I feel like Stan won't limit Zion, but I feel like Stan is gonna have these kind of values to, like, look, we gotta do this. Remember now, we gotta play defense. We gotta be solid on offense, smart decisions, but have fun. This is your show. Kind of feeling because now Stan's to the point where he's like older and being able to commentate. He's able to kind of just sit back and look how the game's evolved.
But
With him
that
sitting
keeps
out.
you connected. That keeps him on people's minds.
Right. Exactly.
But then you see that his brother, of course, was on that carousel along with Mark Jackson. But it's like Stan loses the job in 2018, back on again in 2020. It's like, come on, man. It's like, I hear everything you're saying, and I don't disagree with those things. But it just really gets me the other part of it that it's still kind of like, So I guess my question to you is, what does success look like under a Stan Van Gundy coach team, especially when you have, the potential perennial all-star Zion Williamson on your team?
I think it brings, with them having young players like Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and, Jackson Hayes and Zion Williamson, of course. I think, it kind of brings that nitty gritty type of team that, it kind of reminds me of what we saw in Memphis. I mean, Memphis had led by John Morant, Jaren Jackson, and Michigan State's very own. I mean, we see, nitty gritty young players with Dylan Brooks coming up, starting for them, doing really well. We see young players buy into a system and then, kind of growing with that system and their star player kind of like leading the way. And I feel like Zion can do that. I feel like, with Alvin Gentry, I feel like a lot of times you saw different identities of the team. I feel like we knew, well, he didn't have Zion in the beginning, which, is a little, I got to give him that. He didn't have him. But still, though, it's like a lot of times people are still worrying of like, what kind of team is New Orleans? They have a lot of talent, but can he get them over that hump? And I feel like, being a different kind of team in the NBA and playing defense, I think that could, separate you a lot from most coaches and most teams, as we start playing again, just playing defense and also letting the young players kind of, be themselves and kind of groom, and Stan Van Gundy has proven to, allow role players like Jameer Nelson and Rashard Lewis to go to have an all-star type of year and to be, to be all-stars, and Ryan Anderson to win most improved player. So, I mean, if he can build those kind of guys, to be high caliber players, and, I think he can build guys like Lonzo. I mean, we've seen glimpses of Lonzo, being like a really great guard in the league, getting people involved, playing strong defense. I think with Lonzo being a very, playmaking defensive, emphasis on defensive, kind of guard, I think it can kind of cater to what he wants. And I think he mentioned like, he didn't put his name out for every job. And I think he saw something new and he saw something different in New Orleans.
Hold on for a second though, Terry. To say, and I don't disagree with the campaign you're on for Stan Van Gundy, and I'm saying I appreciate Stan Van Gundy, but I think it's fair and objective to say, just listen to what you just said. He didn't put his name out for every job.
Right.
To even say that he's in a position that he could be selective about which NBA jobs he wants. Now you can say, well, he's the oldest guy out here. He's been around. I get it. But even still, isn't that such a great place to be in? Because I don't think a lot of these other guys have the ability to say, man, I don't want to interview for that, but I'll interview for that. I mean, am I beating a dead horse? Am I making up something that's not really there? Am I seeing things? But it's just like, I don't know, man. I just guess these teams have their internal culture and they know what they need. And Stan Van Gundy's resume, I guess, is impressive overall. But at the end of the day, what is success going to be? Are these guys going to the finals under Stan Van Gundy?
All right. I think, I don't think Stan Van Gundy is a long term. I think he's more of a short term, maybe about 3 or 4 years. That kind of similar to what Mark Jackson was with the Warriors.
Help us get something going in direction. Because so Alvin Gentry wasn't that.
I don't think they
thought that he was going to be that with his championship pedigree with the Golden State Warriors, and he came and he had history, and he had the years, but clearly it didn't show. But I guess so. What makes Stan Van Gundy more attractive is he has the ability to exert his will on a team. And maybe they even said that they were supposedly like that last time out that Alvin Gentry didn't call, was probably what cost him his job last season. when there was a run going on and he just didn't
Right.
cause it, you know, and one call could cost you your season. I mean that it was pretty close to coming to an end. And,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't deny the points you're making. I just think I'm just wrestling with trying to either convince myself or just see it for what it is. I mean, Stan Van Gundy is a good guy all the way around. And like you said, maybe the role is, hey, I'm going to come in and see how I do, and in a couple of years, maybe I'll move up into the front office because he was a front office
maybe.
guy
Yeah, he
in
was. Yep.
Detroit. How do you go from being a front office guy or a guy that's probably at this point in his career, Terry, where he's probably when he goes to negotiated with Detroit, he said, listen, you know, I can pick and choose where I want to go. I want from front office ties. But if these guys
Right.
say, no, we won't let you go from one front office to another. We got our front office, but we can find something for you, you know, to transition. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I'll be interested to see. And I guess, you know, there's just a player side and there's a coaching side, and we'll definitely see. What do you think?
I definitely think so. I wasn't really too found on the hiring, but just going deep and diving into, Stan Van Gundy's track record and coaching resume, you can kind of see why. And I think, that's why I was like, saying that he's like kind of a short term kind of deal, to kind of put these guys in the right direction. And then, I don't know who they go next. I think, someone to kind of keep them going. I kind of thought of it as like, Mark Jackson and the Warriors. I give Mark Jackson a lot of credit for how that Warriors team was made. I mean, they got Curry, snuck and got Curry, and drafted Klay Thompson. And then they also got Draymond Green. Three players, who were very underlooked. Curry got the hype after, his incredible run with Davidson in the
Right,
NCAA tournament.
right.
Thompson, who is a young, NBA's player's son, up and coming, can shoot the ball really well. And then Draymond Green, MSU's very own Draymond Green, the playmaking kind of style. Thought he was an undersized, power forward, undersized forward, and couldn't really keep up with the NBA. He most thought he wasn't very athletic enough and didn't
Mhm.
have, a lot of, a bunch of, things and ways and excuses not to really give him the credit he deserves. But you see Mark Jackson groom these guys, another veteran, he understands and very people person about, building relationships with Curry and Thompson and Green, kind of groom that team. They didn't win as much, but they did get pretty far, competing with the Spurs and Clippers, and every, in their series and their runs with Mark Jackson. But we see them fire Jackson. It was very controversial about that. But then they bring in a guy like Steve Kerr, who kind of brings them over while they're already groomed with Mark Jackson. Then you start to see them start to explode. You see Curry have that MVP season, back to back, one unanimous. You start to see them blossom. And I think that's what David Griffin might be trying to do and emulating here, bringing an old veteran guy to let these, young guys, that this is how the NBA works. You might see some strides where they might end up maybe making the playoffs, maybe
Right,
not. But I think
right.
it's just this is the kind of the time where you start to develop these young guys, like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo and Zion, who still have plenty of years to go. But I think you kind of will see that, and bring in the next guy to kind of bring them over the top.
No, you really helped me with that. Let me tell you why you helped me, Terry, with the time that we have. Because when you brought up Mark Jackson, I was seething a little bit when I always hear that. It's like Mark Jackson is unemployed as it relates to coaching, and you see these guys.
Right.
Maybe that's a reason why I give a little bit of the side eye, if you will, to the Stan Van Gundy hire, despite him being someone that I appreciate for what he's done for me. And just on that point right there, do I have a right to be critical of someone who did something for me? And whether that's referring to this discussion or in general, what do you think about that?
I think just being who you are and being an NBA fan. I think first you're NBA, first you're African American male, and then you're an NBA fan. So I think thinking about these African American coaches who aren't given a shot, like I said, like Chauncey Billups. I mean, yeah, he's an assistant right now, and I think there's a head coaching job on the way for him. You see Nate McMillan, coach, former coach of the Pacers, and you also see Tyronn Lue, who just got hired for a job. And I think with his ring has a lot to say with that job. Sam Cassell, and you see different like coaches out there who could definitely be coaching the team right now. And so I definitely feel your frustration and saying why not give these younger guys a chance, especially Billups. I've been waiting for his chance, but I definitely see a lot of in the future, those guys kind of making a name, being brought back some way, somehow. But also, I think, you knowing that he, did you a really good solid favor and bring you with the Pistons, I do see where you can, I wouldn't say lighten up on him, but I would definitely say where you could see the brightness in him and his character and how he can
Yes.
impact that Pelicans organization.
No doubt. And I think what I'm really doing, man, is a cathartic moment for me because I'm really just trying to be, you know, consistent with my own beliefs. Like, because the
Right.
other part of it is if he was a horrible human being, which he's not based on what we understand and based on my experience, him
Hmm.
doing something nice for me, does that make him okay with me? It's like, somebody is a horrible person, but you benefit from being connected to them. Does that
Right.
dissolve them for what they're doing? When you brought up the Mark Jackson piece, I was able to say that, and thank you for the feedback you gave me on that because you make a good point.
Oh yeah.
Like Lens, you a black man and you NBA fan, you can have your opinion about this. Despite what it is, you're right. But also, it made me think about not only the Steve Kerr, but the Frank Vogel hire, and I really want to touch on this to see if we can really kind of bring this together, which I think we've done a great job for our listeners and whatnot. Frank Vogel comes out of obscurity. He was fired from Indiana. Comes out of obscurity. True indeed, he kind of gave it to LeBron a little bit. They kind of challenged him a little bit early on in that playoff series some time ago, but he gets the LA job. And it's kind of like the same thing. It was like, Frank Vogel. But those Lakers, baby, can't be stopped. Now, Frank Vogel definitely didn't hurt that process. But my question is, could somebody else have done that job if Frank Vogel done?
I think the closest person to doing that job would be I would say honestly, Toronto Lou. I mean, because Lou has been proven, and I did a little bit of digging on him as he got his new his job hiring as the Clippers coach. I mean, he talked about it how it's a players run league, and so building that relationship with, he admitted, he was like, man, coaching star players is tough. I mean, we're talking about LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. We already know their attitudes are very, they have some strong attitudes, and they they're very different players, and bringing them together to kind of work out something to win a championship, let alone come down from 3-1, where, you think fire is going on in the locker room, everybody's
Right.
fighting and yelling at each other to come back and win. So I think maybe a guy like him, Mark Jackson maybe, but I think, it'd be like kind of tough for him to do that. I think, with Tyronn Lue already having that relationship with LeBron would help for sure. But I think, with just being able to recognize that it's a player-run league, and just to go back to Van Gundy, realizing that these players are starting to, take the charge of this league. It's not so much coaches. We're more so of making the scheme and allowing these players to kind of use that scheme and take us to the next level. Because I mean, Tyronn Lue will be the first one to tell you that you got to have players to go far. I mean, when LeBron and Kyrie left, man, he went 0-6 quick, and they fired him quick.
Yeah.
So I mean, he'd be the first one to tell you, like, look, I mean, hey, man, you got to have players, but you also got to be.
I can explain. I can explain.
Right.
I don't have
I
any.
lost LeBron and Kyrie. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd be the first one to tell you. I mean, but you got to have players, but you also, it's very important to build that bond. I feel like Frank Vogel did a great job with building that bond, and just listening to their practices on YouTube, you can hear him kind of have that sense of dominance. I mean, I feel like LeBron.
Frank Vogel, you sense that from the.
I would.
Okay.
I think I did. I think I did. Yeah, I think it was just like, Frank Vogel knows what he wants. I think it's very important that a coach, any level of sports,
Even if you're coaching LeBron James.
I think so. I think, I feel like,
Anthony Davis.
I think a guy.
I think what happened is, and the LeBron and AD said that they agreed on what they need to do, which probably took the pressure off of Frank Vogel because they were self-checked. Like LeBron was a true vet, like no, and he was helping AD get his, so maybe that was working out where he wasn't left to deal with the wrath of a LeBron James, maybe.
Yeah, and Coach Lue did touch on that because like LeBron being a champion and coming into the this Cavaliers organization, LeBron knew what it took to win, and so like Coach Lue said that he kind of created that pathway of like, we need to do this, we need to make sure we're doing good with conditioning, make sure we're good on maybe going hard at these last couple of games in the playoffs to build that momentum and then keep it going. So I mean, I think he did that with Coach Vogel, and also giving that championship DNA to Anthony Davis. I mean, it's I think, just learning how to win from a guy
Championship
right
DNA.
now who, he's been to so many straight in this decade. It'd be the, firsthand, take notes every day. I would, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? With somebody who's been winning and knows that it's a guaranteed trip to the finals if you were LeBron. So I feel like it definitely took the pressure off him, but also it's a lot of pressure on him because he has the coach with somebody like LeBron. And just listen to him coach, you can see that like he knows that this is what we need to do. LeBron has his own plan of what we need to do as a team. And
Mhm.
Vogel's like, okay, this is how we come with that plan. Let's do this, let's do that. And just watching them play, you see different schemes, getting shooters open, getting LeBron in comfortable spots. I feel like him and Coach Lue did a great job at that. I mean, we see 2016 finals last second shot, not last second shot, but the go away shot, the go ahead
Go
shot
ahead.
with
Right.
Kyrie Irving,
Right.
what I mean, over Curry. I mean, we see him put him in a great position. So I mean,
Right.
it's very key that to take the pressure off him as a coach, but then you're still playing with the King James. So I mean, it's
Right.
already pressure with that.
Right. Well, we're going to get ready to wrap up, Terry. We've had a great hour. I want to thank you. I want to thank Coach Orlando Watkins. But before I go, I do want to say quickly, and I'm only coming to these conclusions because I'm listening to your stream of thought and some great points you're making. That means some people get cussed out in the Clippers locker room because when you said championship DNA and you talked about how the issues that the Clippers had with Sweet Lou going out to get them wings, issues going on that you're hearing about that you don't hear about in these championship locker rooms. So I think part of Ty Lue's role is going to be, and Chauncey Billups having his back, to check these guys, to check them like, hey man, we don't do that. You need to get that together. And one more thing I want to say before we get out of here to wrap up, and this is a great note. Shout out to Desmond Ferguson and Moneyball for their new acquisition. They've become licensed, and Moneyball will be able to sell Michigan State Spartan gear. They got some great gear already with the old school Spartan logo and calligraphy. And shout out to Desmond for what he's been doing. Desmond's been a part of my process. I'm sure part of yours too, Terry, with Lansing Everett wearing Moneyball products. But I want to thank him. I want to thank Coach Orlando Watkins for reminding me of the great stuff that's going on. And definitely the support that Desmond is giving working with AAU. So Desmond is doing his thing. Moneyball is doing their thing, and man, let's hope next summer, man, we can be courtside doing our thing. So with that, for my co-host, Mr. Terry McCord Jr., you've always done a great job. You're always up to speed with the information, and believe me talking to you helps me work through things. Whether it's talking about the Stan Van Gundy hire, recognizing that, but that's a true testament to you and your family. And again, Coach Watkins, man, you do so much, not just for us, but for all the young people that you're coaching and inspiring. So I want to wrap us up. And again, shout out to the Streets is Talking Podcast Network. You can catch us on Saturdays and Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. TheStreetsIsTalking.com. You'll hear myself and Terry McCord. So with that, I'm going to go, and we'll see you guys next week. And thanks for supporting the SPS Edge.